Yep.
Okay, so this is the Helitowcart v910. Just going to show you how to operate it here. So turn the master switch on here to 1. That turns all the motors on to actually move the Helitowcart. Number 2 turns on the ground power function. 1 and 2 is both moving the tow cart and the ground power function. So we're just going to move it for now. These lights here illuminate based on which functionality is being used. This is the charging port here. So when you turn the master on here, you also need to turn on the remote control panel. So it's in off right now. We turn that to on, and that allows us to operate the tow cart. So what we're going to do now is we're going to roll the tow cart underneath the helicopter. It takes about a couple of feet for stopping distance, so you do want to let your hand off the trigger a little bit before you get to your stopping point. It's good to kind of pick some visual aids to know how far underneath the helicopter you need to go. What we've kind of found is that where this last piece is here, if it's lined up or just past the front of the skid gear, then that's usually a pretty good distance. So I'm just going to wheel it in just another couple inches here. There we go. So what we'll do now is we'll swing the lifting arms around. These ordinarily will detach and they come right out, but we find it a lot easier to just leave them in and put them in place so that you don't have to keep pulling all these pins out. It's a good idea to think about lock wiring this somewhere on one of the other attachments, just so you don't lose this pin. Likewise, there's another one over here that you might want to think about locking in place so you don't lose it. So what we're going to do is we're going to swing this arm around here, and we're going to feed this guy into the skid gear attachment, just like that. You want everything at a right angle when it's being picked up. So you just maneuver this a little bit so it's a right angle. You do want this to be a little bit looser. You don't want a nice snug fit like this. If it's really snug like that, sometimes the skid gear will move on you after you've lifted the helicopter, and it's going to be very, very difficult to unscrew after that. So nice and loose there. Once that's in place, you can come around and swing this arm through and lock it in place here. Sometimes you need to just jimmy it a little bit. There we go. So that guy's in place there. We'll get this one all done up again to its right angles. There we go. Now we're going to swing the counterbalance arms around. The Bell 505 helicopter is really tail heavy, so when this thing lifts up, it lifts the skid gears so that it meets the counterweight arms. You don't want to attach the straps right now. You want to leave them here. And one of the reasons is, well, one, it's really hard to feed the straps underneath, but the other reason is if you put the straps on and crank the ratchet in, it will flex the skid gear so that it's actually meeting here, and that can be hard long-term on your skid gear. So you just want to leave it unattached. So we're going to do all the same things here on the other side. So we'll swing the arm into place. Put the pin in. Okay, so those guys are all in again, loose on this side so that if the skid gear moves, it doesn't become hard to take off. Swing the counter weight arm around again. The counter weight arm should be as close to the front, the forward crossbow as possible, just to take the weight off the helicopter. This will create excess stress on the skid gear if it's too far this way. And if you happen to be able to feed it behind the skid gear and it's here, there will be a lot of weight coming up from the helicopter. So So best to put it right in front of the forward cross tube. Okay, so we're gonna lift the helicopter up now. The one thing that you should always do is have your main rotor blades tied down, especially if it's windy outside. If you're ever spinning the helicopter, the main rotor blades will tend to want to stay in place while the helicopter's spinning. So this will just avoid hitting anything. So now we're going to come to the remote control panel. I'm just going to swing this over. There we go. And for whatever reason, hitting the down button is actually lifting the helicopter. The up button here is what puts it down. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift the helicopter now, and we do it slowly just so that there we go. So we've got the helicopter up a little bit. It's not up the full way right now. So what I do is I lift it up just a little bit so that the nose doesn't come crashing down. I put the ratchet straps on. Okay, tighten those guys. That's so that the skids stay nice and snug against the counterweight arm and the nose doesn't come down on you. And we'll come around and we'll do the same with the counterweight arm on this side. Okay, so that's all nice and snug, so we'll lift the rest of the helicopter up. It's always a good idea to lift it up to its highest possible amount, just so that you're clearing any obstacles when you are moving the helicopter around. There we go, so that's fully lifted. Now just trigger, so if you push the trigger up like this, it's going to move the helicopter back. If you push it down, it's going to move the helicopter towards you. This right here is like an emergency stop button. It only works in when it's going backwards towards you. I think the idea is if you bump into a wall or something that it'll trigger it and it'll stop. So yeah, very, very easy to operate. You know, you can spin it around. We're close to some other helicopters here, so we'll spin it around. And so we'll just move it back into place here. And then taking it apart is basically just the exact opposite of what you do to set it up. So we stop the tow cart. The other thing is when you're moving the tow cart, if you're moving it backwards, you want it to come to a complete stop before you switch the direction on the trigger. Just something to keep in mind when operating it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to lower the helicopter a little bit, but we're not going to lower it all the way. Basically until the skid gear near the aft of the helicopter is touching the ground. Just in case the nose comes down on you, you don't want the nose of the aircraft hitting the front of the tow cart. So the back skid gear is touching. Now we'll release these ratchet straps. Again, you kind of loop them out, leave them out of the way so that when you put the helicopter down, it doesn't inadvertently set the skid gear down on your ratchet strap. So we've undone one side. There we go. We've undone the other side. Leave it out of the way again. And now we'll just set the rest of the helicopter back down. Okay, so the helicopter's down now. So if we were moving, to go out to fly, obviously we'd swing all the arms in, we'd take the tow cart away. But if you're just putting it back in the hangar the rest of the day, we leave all of the arms in place just the way they are, except the ratchet straps. Of course, you don't do them up so you're not flexing the skid gear. And that's how you use the Helitowcart v910.